It was the last Friday before the homecoming game, the air buzzing with the strange mix of teenage excitement and undercurrents of rivalry that always seemed to thicken around Lincoln High this time of year. The cheerleading squad had just wrapped up practice, the squeak of sneakers on polished gym floors fading as the girls filed out into the hallway. Avery Lawson, the captain of the squad, trailed behind the others, her ponytail swinging, her varsity jacket draped over her shoulders like a crown she didn't need to wear to prove she'd earned it. She had a reputation as smart, disciplined, and a quiet confidence that made some people admire her and others envy her. She was the type who didn't need to shout to be noticed. Unfortunately, that made her a target for people who liked their dominance loud in public. The moment she stepped into the long corridor that led toward the side exit, she spotted them, 3 boys leaning against the lockers as if they owned the place. Kyle Benton, their ringleader, was all smirk and swagger, the kind of guy who thought the world bent for his amusement. His 2 shadows, Mason and Drew, followed him around like vultures looking for scraps of cruelty. Avery had dealt with their comments before, the casual jabs disguised as jokes, the way their eyes lingered just a second too long. But today, something in their posture told her this wasn't going to be one of those days she could brush them off and walk away. "Hey, Lawson!" Kyle's voice boomed through the emptying hall, bouncing off the lockers. "Nice jacket. Bet you think it makes you look like royalty, huh?" Avery didn't break stride. "Bet I think it keeps me warm," she replied evenly, the faintest smirk tugging at her lips. "Wrong move." The smirk was like waving a red flag in front of a board bull. Kyle's grin widened, and in 2 steps he was in front of her, blocking her path. Mason and Drew flanked her from behind, closing in just enough to make the space feel suffocating. "You know," Kyle said, circling her slowly, "I've been wondering, does being cheer captain mean you get to boss everyone around? Or do you just get to wear that jacket like some trophy?" "Move," Avery said, her voice still calm but firmer now. Kyle chuckled, and then, in one quick motion, his hands shot out and grabbed the edge of her jacket. Avery's hands went up to push him away, but Mason's grip locked onto her arms, holding her still. Before she could twist free, Kyle yanked hard, wrenching the jacket right off her shoulders. The sound of laughter exploded from the 3 of them as Kyle dangled the jacket over his head like a prize. "Oh, look, boys, cheer royalty just got dethroned," he mocked, pretending to inspect the inside like it was some cheap knockoff. Avery's face flushed, not with embarrassment, but with a cold, sharp anger that she kept carefully behind her eyes. She could feel the eyes of a few stragglers in the hallway on her, the weight of their silence almost worse than the laughter. They weren't going to step in. They never did. "You're gonna give that back," she said, her tone low, even, almost too calm. Kyle's grin faltered for half a second before returning, wider than ever. "Or what?" Avery didn't answer. "Not yet." Instead, she straightened her shoulders, locked her gaze on his, and turned away, walking toward the side exit without another word. Behind her, Kyle called after her, "Hey, where you going, princess? Forgot your crown." The laughter followed her out into the crisp autumn air. She walked straight to her car, slid into the driver's seat, and gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles ached. She didn't cry, she refused to give them that power. She only sat there, staring at the empty space where her jacket should be, thinking about how it wasn't just a piece of clothing. It was a symbol of everything she'd worked for, every late-night practice, every bruise, every moment she'd pushed herself to lead her team with pride. And they'd ripped it away like it was nothing. But Avery Lawson wasn't the kind of girl who just took a hit and stayed down. By the time she pulled out of the school parking lot, the beginnings of a plan were already forming in her mind, not a petty, impulsive one, but something precise, something that would hit harder than anything they could have expected. She didn't just want her jacket back. She wanted them to understand, in a way they'd never forget, that she was not someone you could humiliate without consequences. That night, in her room, she pulled out a notebook and began writing. Not a journal entry, not a rant, but a list. Names. Times. Weaknesses. She thought back to every encounter she'd ever had with Kyle, Mason, and Drew, every word they'd said, every careless reveal about where they hung out, what they feared, what they avoided. By the time she was done, the page looked less like a teenage girl's scribbles and more like the start of a tactical blueprint. Her phone buzzed texts from teammates who'd heard about what happened. "You okay?" We saw them with your jacket. Want us to talk to Coach? She replied to none of them. This wasn't about asking for help. This was about her taking control back with her own hands. 2 days later, she found her first opportunity. After school, she spotted Mason by the bike racks, fumbling with his lock. No Kyle, no Drew. Perfect. She approached quietly, her steps deliberate. Hey, Mason, she called, and he turned, startled. Before he could smirk or say anything, she stepped closer. Tell Kyle I'm coming for my jacket. He laughed, but it was a shaky sound. Or what? You gonna cheer at me? She smiled, not a warm smile, but one that made the hairs on his neck stand up. You'll see. Then she reached past him, grabbed his bike lock, and with one swift, practiced twist, she hooked it through the spokes in a way that would make the wheel useless. She didn't break it, she didn't have to. She just made it clear she could. And then she walked away. By the time Mason freed his bike an hour later, the message was already in motion. Kyle might have thought he'd humiliated her, but Avery was about to make sure the game was played on her terms now. And for anyone watching this, remember, this is just the beginning. You're gonna want to stick around, because when the tables turn, they turn hard. So if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, do it now. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next.